Good evening, bonsoir. I want to talk today about some of the things that I've seen in cybersecurity, having spent the last 20 years of my life in cybersecurity. I had hair when I started my career in cybersecurity, and I was short. IBM is a company, and it's probably the oldest company at Assises, right? 110-year-old company. And as you may hopefully agree with, IBM makes big bets, right? When IBM does something, it tries to really go for it. Whether it's years ago trying to help NASA put a man on the moon, or more recently our bets on blockchain, on artificial intelligence. But today I want to talk about our big bet on cybersecurity, which we think is a critical need. And before you make a big bet, you have to be convinced that you can make progress towards the future. Why start on something if it's a hopeless task? And if I thought cybersecurity was a hopeless task, I certainly wouldn't have survived the last 20 years of my life. Every day getting up and trying to think about how to prevent the next breach or help with a compliance need or an insider threat. So I think it's important that we recognize progress and the progress that we're making. And that is the reason I played that video. It's a bit of a commercial, but it's a video about no headline happening. Because too often in cybersecurity, I'm sure in many of the presentations today we're going to hear, or during the Assises, we're going to hear about everything going bad. But you know, I think we also should spend a second talking about progress. Because having seen what we're doing over the last 20 years, there's lots of problems we have to solve, but I also like to think about the progress. And this will be the only time during the conference we'll talk about something positive, I think. Progress is hard to see. If you think about, I have 3 children, I was telling backstage, 3 little girls at home. When they have their birthdays in the summer, you don't really notice they're a year older until you look at a picture from a year earlier. Lots of progress in that year. And I think in cyber, it's sometimes hard to remember how much progress we have. Just pull out your phone. You don't have to pull it out literally. But think about the things on this phone. I see a room full of probably fairly cyber geeky people. I mean, do we ever think we'd have encryption, fairly secure apps, I'm not going to say totally secure apps, advanced authentication, biometrics, all on something this small? And it's not just the technology, and I list some other examples here in the slide behind me, but it's also the awareness. You had a wonderful speaker here this morning talking about France's commitment to cybersecurity. That didn't happen 10 years ago. You didn't have ministers, you didn't have boards of directors interested in what you were doing. I know when I started in cyber, most of my meetings were in the basement of the building with some geek that had barely enough light to work, who was talking about threats that no one actually cared about. And now, boards of directors, supervisory boards here in Europe are spending time on this topic. I talked to a group of 10 large company CIOs recently, and they were asking me really hard questions. 5 years ago, I could have said the word APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. They would have said, ooh, amazing, right? Now they're educated. So I think we are making progress, and I think we can leverage that progress as we move forward. Now, for the bad stuff. Criminals are relentless. In my team of 8,000 people around the world, we have 200 or 300 people dedicated to threat research, researching malware, the dark web, all those things you would expect. And criminal activity is thriving like never before. And we see this in many ways. We see it in the volume. We do see it in the headlines. I see it in funny things like, you know how organized these criminals are because they send a lot of their malware on Friday. And of course, the major theory is they send it on Friday because companies are less alert on the weekend. But there's a second reason hackers send their attacks on Friday. They want to take the weekend off. These are organized criminals, remember, and this is different. They're coming to work. It's 9 to 5. They too have families at home. They too want to take the weekend off. They come back on Monday. We see them log into their consoles, see if their attacks have worked, and start working on the next techniques. So it is relentless. And if it's not criminals, and I still think organized criminals are the biggest issue in terms of the number of breaches, but if it's not organized criminals, of course, it's nation states. And if it's not nation states, it's you all preparing for compliance. And if it's not compliance, it's insiders that are causing problems. And often on a bad day, all 4 of those factors mix up to cause you a very, very long day. In France, the cost of a data breach rose 20% from last year to this year. $3.6 million is the average cost of a data breach here in France. I realize I'm in Monaco, but you're all from France. Most of you are from France. We use the Ponemon, we partner with the Ponemon group to do this research. Larry Ponemon, I don't know if you've ever heard Larry Ponemon speak. He's been doing the same research for the last 15 years, asking hundreds, this year 500 companies around the world who actually experienced a breach. What did it cost? Technically, in terms of preparing, in terms of getting through the breach, and then in terms of recovering. And the average breach is about $3.6 million to get through. It's an interesting study, and we have, of course, made the study available to all of you at the conference. There's a lot of interesting data in there. But for example, one thing that I found interesting in France, how much time is spent on the average breach? Any thoughts? A day? 60 days? 285. 210 days are spent on discovering the breach. On discovering the breach, okay? Again, your speaker this morning talked about detection. 210 days of this is spent on detection. And then the next 75 on the recovery and the containment. That's your 285 days spent on a breach. The study then goes on to say, what if we could drop 100 days off of that? You'd save immediately $1 million. There's something to think about when we think about our security. Do we spend time on shortening that window, detecting faster, recovering more quickly? So that's why I want to shift from the landscape out there to what I would do if I were you and what I'm helping our customers do around the world. And I think to think about this, and it really is linked to the bets that IBM is making with our customers in cybersecurity, I think about them as force multipliers. What are force multipliers that can help you given the difficulty that we face in the cyber world? And I think there are three. Well, I know there are three because those are the three I'm going to talk about today. First is getting smarter. You as an individual getting smarter. We're spending a lot of time on this topic. Second is responding faster. Typically as a team, how do you respond faster? Spending a lot of time here. And the third is more, not the individual, not the team, but the industry. How do we work together more effectively? So that's where I want to go through and give you some of my thoughts from 20 years in the business, from working with a lot of customers on what I see as priority. Smarter, faster, and together. So when I think about smarter, I'm thinking about the individual. And the way we thought about smarter was, how do we add artificial intelligence? Although I actually prefer augmented intelligence, and that's how we started thinking about this. And I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I work in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I share an IBM building with the IBM Health division. And the IBM Health division spends all day trying to figure out how to, quite literally, cure cancer. And so you're at the water cooler, at the coffee machine, talking to your colleagues, and they were using artificial intelligence, Watson, to think through how to cure cancer. Could we teach Watson how to diagnose patients? And it got my team thinking, could we teach Watson how to diagnose cybersecurity? There's lots of uses of AI out there to try and detect malware, but not as much on how to read everything and understand everything about cyber and apply it to any incident. So we set out to try and do that about 1.5 years ago. And that is what, in the end, we did call Watson for Cyber. Whenever I say the word Watson, the expectations go way up. But we taught Watson, a specific version of Watson, how to think and read about cyber. We had to train it. We worked with 8 universities to train it, and then we fed it 1,024,000, I think it's now up to 2 million documents. Think about blogs, books, the CISSP exam, everything that we could find, we fed. But mostly, we fed Watson very current information. Every month in cybersecurity, there are 60,000 blogs published. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot read 60,000 blogs in a month. Well, it turns out Watson can. Watson doesn't forget, Watson doesn't get tired, and Watson doesn't complain and doesn't ask for a raise. So we taught Watson 10 billion structured elements, and then had our customers spend time in the SOC using it. When an alert came in, Watson would tell you what it knew about that alert. And it was an interesting experiment because we noticed that prior, there was a lot of time spent on each alert in a SOC. In fact, the average SOC analyst could do about 10 alerts a day because they would call a friend at another bank, they would Google or internet search on that type of malware, they would go to VirusTotal, they would go everywhere trying to figure out what this alert might possibly mean. And with Watson, they were able to get up to 30 incidents a day, 30 alerts in the Security Operations Center a day. So we thought that was a pretty good result. We have over 200 customers using Watson today around the world for cybersecurity. It's still a journey. AI has massive potential, but I thought this was a good example to share on what we're doing in this area. It is making the individual smarter, making sure that a room of 500 people can do the work of 5,000 people. That's, I think, pretty exciting, especially when here in France, everywhere around the world, we cannot hire cybersecurity professionals fast enough. So, as I said, when you say Watson, you raise the bar. It's not just Watson. We have been taking artificial intelligence from our labs around the world. We have a lab in Haifa, Israel, in Germany, of course in the US, in the UK, in Canada, and these researchers have been applying artificial intelligence to almost every cyber problem that we're helping customers with. And I could bore you going through some of these examples. In fact, one of the most boring parts of cybersecurity is probably source code scanning, right? You guys are CISOs. You finally get the development team to adopt scanning technology, source code or production scanning, SAST and DAST for the geeks out there on this topic. And then it generates lots of false positives. And your developers get frustrated because of the noise. We applied artificial intelligence to this, reducing false positives in source code scanning by 98%, making it much more effective to actually implement the technology. Fraud is a great example. We have found a whole way of applying artificial intelligence to finding phishing and spear phishing sites around the world, classifying them, and quickly making sure that a fraudster that sets up a new spear phishing site is discovered and that a bank transaction does not end up getting hijacked as a result. Risky users, insider behavior. I keep mentioning that there really are just 4 reasons why we spend money on cybersecurity. It's the hackers, it's compliance, it's innovation, rolling out cloud or mobile or whatever, IoT, and then it's the insiders. And having looked at the insiders for a while, it's very hard to really understand when an insider goes bad. Bad on purpose, bad by accident. Artificial intelligence in that area as well, user behavior analytics, applying different types of machine learning has really allowed about 3,000 of our customers to get very smart on insider risk. Not possible 2 years ago. So I'm really excited about artificial intelligence. There's a lot of marketing about it in the world. I really think you should push whatever technology you're using in security. What is the latest AI you've applied there? This is where my lab, my 2,000 engineers around the world are spending a lot of time on AI. So that should get the individual smarter. Second is orchestration. Responding faster as a team. And if you look here, it's maybe a little hard to see, but these are 2 pilots in an airplane. I flew here today, we had a lot of wind. A couple of people got nervous. There was a flight recently in the US. Was trying to go, I think, from New York to DC and had to make an emergency landing. The engine blew, it broke the window, a person got sucked out the window, and of course everyone's in a panic. And I went back and listened to the recording of that flight, and it's amazing to listen to the pilots. Obviously it's a very sad situation, but the pilot knew exactly what to do. I'm shutting off the engine, I'm dropping to 5,000 feet, I'm finding a new airport. I'm landing the plane. Boom, 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 boom. These pilots have practiced what happens in a crisis. They know exactly what to do, right? It is mechanical, almost cool, the way that they go about an incident. Is that what a cyber incident feels like at your company? Yeah? I got a job for you. I see a lot of cyber incidents. Usually it's pick up the phone, give my team a call, massive panic, a scramble. It's often the first time. And you're trying to figure out what to do. What are the activities? What are the people, process, technology steps you need to apply to this crisis? Who do I call? Email's down. Is there a WhatsApp group? Do I know the mobile phone of our CEO? What is the commander's intent? That's a term we've started using. The commander's intent. What is the intent of the commander of your business during a cyber crisis if you cannot reach that person? It was interesting when Maersk had its breach, and I don't have it written down here, but when Maersk had its breach, I think the chairman of the CEO of the company made a very simple statement, and he broadcast that out through WhatsApp, said, do what's right for the customer, we'll cover the cost. That's a very clear commander's intent. With that, a security team can operate. They know that they can get the servers up and running, they can spend some money, they can take some risk. What are you going to say to the press? What do you say to journalists when they show up? Have you already written that statement? That is the power of orchestration and automation. And that is what we've been spending time on, both technology, people, and process with our customers, is putting together the automated runbooks for certain scenarios. There's a GDPR incident. I mean, you guys know right now that you could write down what you need to do during a GDPR incident. You know that you could write down right now what to do when an insider steals something and walks out the building and you discover it that night. Or when WannaCry hits next time, you know the steps you need to go through. Have you written them down? But writing them down really isn't enough. Have you put them into a framework, into a technology that can get you through it? We have technology now that allows you to literally have 10 phones go off with an automated message. The commander's intent, here's a script for the press, here's the steps, and then automate and orchestrate activities, blocking firewalls, changing routers, revoking identities, all from the SOC. That's what orchestration looks like from a people and from a technology perspective. It makes a massive difference. As I said, take 100 days off of that response. For an average incident, you're saving $1 million. Heaven forbid you become a major incident, and then the numbers are in the tens and hundreds of millions. So they can make a huge difference. Where I live, we started a cyber range, a range where customers could come and practice. As I mentioned, we moved into a new building with the Watson Health team about 2 years ago, and a colleague on my team said, I want to build a SOC in the building. And I said, Caleb, we don't need a SOC. I already have 11 SOCs around the world. Why would I need a 12th? And he said, no, we need a fake SOC. And I said, well, why do I need a fake SOC, right? Fake news, fake SOC. We need a fake SOC so customers can come and practice what it's like to go through an incident. And he built that. You see a picture of it here. And we've had over 2,000 customers come. We've had 3 senators, 2 governors, a lot of Europeans, even some Russians, visit our cyber range in Boston. We're going to be doing much more of this. We have some announcements next week about where our next cyber range is going to be. I think you guys will really like that. But it's been amazing to see people come together. Every day in the office, I have customers practicing going through this. It's a company that we built, a fake company. It's actually a real SOC. We have a TV studio. And no matter how good the team is, they always fail, right? It's like simulating an aircraft, and there's always going to be a simulated crash of the airplane. And so this is what we do here. Practice the orchestration. Practice your runbooks. Practice what you think you would do. Bring your CEO, bring your management team, or bring the geeks. Either way, we have different experiences. It's a free range, and I encourage you to take advantage of that. Would love to host you. What do we learn in these 2,000 customers that come through? Well, first of all, culture counts. As I mentioned before, culture is, do you lean into a crisis or do you lean back? We have certain events that happen during the whole incident, and you notice some companies lean in and they attack it, they lead, and some companies are leading, some people are leading back. It's a big difference in how you perform during a crisis. The second is the playbooks or the run books that I mentioned. If your run book is in Excel, first of all, you may not be able to get to your Excel files. And secondly, typically they break down pretty quickly. And we spend a lot of time improving the steps and the run books that people will do. And then finally, leadership matters. We've had some real fun with this. We always thought that the typical professional CISO would be the best person in the cyber range, would really know what she's doing and how to act. Sometimes that's true. I have to say, with all respect to the CISOs out there, sometimes it's the guy on the team that did a tour of duty in the Army, in Afghanistan, or in Iraq, or it's the person that worked in an ambulance for a few years. They really understand how to lean into a crisis. So that's a very interesting part. So that, I think, is how you make your team more effective and faster. The third area is, as I mentioned, stronger together, doing more together. And so in this third area, I got a little frustrated having been in the industry for quite a while. You have, of course, customers, many of you, vendors, many of you in the audience, researchers, for example, on my team, governments, academics. Again, in the medical world, if someone finds a cure for cancer, I mean, there's patenting, but they typically try and share their research in journals. But in cyber, there's not as much of that going on as I think we should do. And so we started thinking about 3 years ago, what could we do to try and really spur more collaboration among the good guys? Because we all know that the collaboration among the bad guys is perfect. Dark web, encrypted browsers, you guys have heard all about how they collaborate. But the question is, how do the good guys collaborate well? And so 3 areas I want to highlight here. One is that we made all of our threat intelligence available to our customers on a portal. Think of it like, maybe it's not the right example, but think of it like a Facebook or a LinkedIn for threat intelligence. We authenticate the users, they're our customers, and then you're able to understand what we know about an incident. So that's one, sharing our threat intel. 2 is that we opened up an app exchange and allowed partners, competitors, customers to build apps on top of our platforms, on top of our portfolio. This has been remarkable. We've seen over 200 apps built. We've built a few, customers have built a few, and then a lot of our partners, some of you in the audience here, have built apps. Palo Alto Networks, one of the most popular apps that from an external party, Cisco, Fortinet, Qualys, all building on top so that as you leverage our technology, it does something special when you leverage that third party's technology. And I think that really helps you guys with the complexity. We've heard a lot of people excited about our partnership with Cisco, where we've integrated about 4 or 5 different products, and Cisco's built 3 different apps on top of our portfolio. It really simplifies how you think about doing security when vendors work together. And the third is something that is called Quad 9. And I'll explain that on a separate slide in 2 seconds. So on the app exchange, the one on the left, we'll be making some announcements here in France about some local partners that are building apps for the French regulations and certain specific security situations here in France. So I think that's going to be very exciting to see that take a local perspective given the regulations here in Europe and in France. Just one detail on the threat intelligence portal. We have over 20,000 customers that have joined. We have a lot of customers at IBM, you can imagine. 14,000 collections of threat data. 80,000 searches happened on the Monday after NotPetya, just to give a sense of scale. That does mean that people came back repeatedly during the day, by the way. I beg your pardon, we now have 72,000 users from, so 72,000 users from about 15, 20,000 individual corporations or entities out there. So that is a really nice way to share intel, because you can go there, you can see all the indicators of compromise that we have, and then you can add to it, and you can click a button to see if you're infected. And that's a real nice way to leverage threat intelligence. I mentioned Quad 9. Quad 9 is an effort that I had to really start to understand when some of my researchers came up with this idea. We found a way of leveraging DNS data to find hackers that were registering new sites for malicious activity, spam, malware, ransomware. In the end, pretty much everything a hacker does has to communicate back to the hacker eventually, the command and control servers. And for that, hackers are registering thousands of DNSs. DNSs being when you type in, Le Monde, .com or .fr, it goes to a DNS server and figures out what the IP address is. So we started working with some telcos on some research we'd done, some artificial intelligence that could figure out when these websites were being registered, or these DNS entries are being registered for bad purpose. And it turned out to be quite effective, 3 days faster than anything else we'd seen in the industry. We're getting ahead of this. We could see someone register something and then put it into our threat database and then have customers get smart on it. Well, we started working with Packet Clearinghouse, which is a large DNS provider based out of the UK. They have 133 servers around the world that people do for free DNS reconciliation. You have Google that owns 8.8.8, and they do DNS. Of course, they're using that to figure out where people are going for ads and for commerce. But PCH does it for free because they want to make the internet a good place. So they said to us, would you guys give us 9.9.9? And my team said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, IBM actually owns 9.9.9. Did you know that? Actually, my team didn't know that. And so we donated 9.9.9 to an alliance with PCH. We donated our research on how we could find this malicious activity. And that was about a year ago, together with the Global Cyber Alliance. And today we're blocking over 2 million domains per day. All you have to do is change your DNS router to 9.9.9. I think you could figure that out by yourself. And we have 50 million endpoints that are using this now. It's growing by millions every week. 360 million malicious domains have been blocked in total. And this is PCH's way of not just being a DNS provider, but providing a safe web experience. So that is an example of the industry trying to collaborate. I'm giving you 3 examples of the industry trying to collaborate. Allowing people to build apps, allowing people to get access to our threat intelligence and share that, and then allowing this free service for a safer web browsing experience. So that is what I wanted to share. Those are the bets that IBM is making in security, many others, and they're all with you, our customers and our partners around the world. As I said, artificial intelligence, I'm seeing individuals become smarter as a result, so push your vendors on AI. I'm seeing orchestration make teams faster and more effective, which can reduce the cost of a breach or ideally help you detect it better. And then, of course, I am seeing with our partnerships with Cisco, Palo Alto, many others in the industry, a new willingness, and also some other alliances that have come up, a new willingness for the industry to work better together. Also, by the way, government-private partnerships are making some progress. Thank you for being here. I'll stay for questions afterwards, but I wish you all a wonderful night. Thank you.